What's up, book nerds? My name is Tara, and this is my video about books in series that I do not plan to finish. So this is a list of 20 different series that I have started and not enjoyed enough to finish. Some of them I got almost all the way to the end, and most of them I read the first book and was like, meh, not for me. I have better things to spend my time on. So before I begin, I want to give the disclaimer that you can leave in the comments like, that series gets so much better as it goes on, or oh my gosh, you just need to read the second and third and 12th book and it'll get great. I know myself pretty well as a reader at this point, and I know that if I don't enjoy the first book, I have so many other things that I can be spending my time on. So going and slogging through a series just because I started it and everybody else loves it is not enough of a reason for me to try to jump back on that horse and keep going. I'm gonna get a new horse. So the first book is The Maze Runner. I wanted this book to have more answers than it had and found out that it was part of the series, and so there's a lot of cliffhangers. And I like a little bit more answers in my book, and I wasn't particularly impressed with any of the characters, and I felt like there was a world that could have been built that wasn't. And unfortunately, it's probably a situation where I'm downgrading this book because I'm expecting it to be something it's not trying to be, but ultimately that doesn't matter because I would have not picked it up if I was expecting it to be what it is, and that's why I won't be continuing on with the series. Next is the Matched trilogy by Ali Condie. I read and do recommend Matched, which is the first book. I really enjoyed it, but when I got to Crossed, I was so incredibly bored that I barely made it through the book. So I reached in a contest and could never bring myself to read it. It felt like homework. It felt like work. So I have given up on the series and do not plan to get back to it, and will probably be donating it very soon. The Last Survivors trilogy by Susan Beth Pfeffer is one also where I really enjoyed the first book. It's an apocalyptic story. The moon is not too close to the earth and this family has to survive. I loved even more the second book, which is The Dead and the Gone, which is the same event, but now it's a boy in New York City and his struggles. But then I got to the third book, This World We Lived In, and it just started being completely focused on like romance and got a little bit weird. So I found out that the fourth book was also not getting high ratings. So I said, you know what? I'm going to stop here before I find this book series to just be unpleasant. The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey was okay. Part of it for me was I don't feel like Cassie felt like a real person. And maybe that's because Rick Yancey was writing her and he's a dude and he doesn't really get how I think a girl would behave, but it just felt very slow, not a lot happened, and so I've heard that the second book is more of the same, so won't be continuing. The next couple books I'm not going to give a lot of explanation on, but they are the Vampire Academy series, Twilight, and 50 Shades of Grey. Each of these I read the first book because movies were coming out or because everybody was talking about them, and I knew when I read them that they weren't really my genre of choice, especially 50 Shades of Grey. You can watch my review on that if you really want to hear the reasons why I just completely hated everything about that book. But yeah, like Vampire Academy was really fun. Twilight was a fast read, though it was infuriating. I fulfilled my cultural obligation. Next book is The Murder Complex by Lindsay Cummings. This is also part of this series, maybe a trilogy, and I was really excited about it because I was thinking this would be a more violent series, and I like the idea of things that push the envelope a little bit in YA. In the end, though, I felt like it was violent just for the sake of being violent. I hated the use of fake swear words. I don't like that. Like, just don't use swear words. Like, why do we have to create fake ones? I think it's a really false sense of world building that's happening there. And I also never really connected with the main character, Meadow and Zephyr. I felt like they were not realistic. They were too much on the like badassery killer thing and not enough on the depth and complexity. And this is where I can point out that a lot of people say, yeah, but the character becomes more complex as the series goes on. That's fine. I don't care. I don't care enough to keep reading. Why am I going to do that if I gave this one 2 out of 5 stars on the first go around? I'm just not. I don't have time for that. There's also a book called Pivot Point by Casey West. That's one where, on all of this list, that's the one where I might be most likely to change my mind, because the idea of a character being able to look at dual timelines of, you know, a decision that she makes and what would happen if she made this decision and what would happen if she made this one is interesting, and I really love the twist at the end of the book. but I just, again, too much focus on romance, and that wasn't really appealing to me. This one is a little bit controversial, and of all the books on this list, might be opening myself up to the most criticism, and it's Shatter Me by Tahereh Mafi. If there is one book that I just hated, it's Shatter Me. Like, I can go into a rage about 50 Shades of Grey, but like I knew that one was going to be bad when I read it. I did not know that Shatter Me was going to be as bad as it was. I hated it. I hated the purple prose. Maybe I should just make a whole video on why I don't like Shatter Me, but Bumped felt like it was trying to be a hybrid of The Handmaid's Tale and like a wacky spectacle of dystopian media heavy world that, you know, this imagining in it, and she just didn't do it very well. The Giver by Lois Lowry is one of my favorite books, especially from my childhood, and I don't plan to continue reading this series because I love the book so much that I'm afraid that reading the rest of the series is going to ruin it for me. So maybe one day, but for right now, I'm just gonna leave it as it is. Why mess with a good thing? There's also 3 books that I read because the book itself is something that's really popular, but it's really outside of my genre preferences. So for example, A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. I enjoyed it, but you know, the later books in the series really get into like really complex stuff that I'm not really interested in. I liked the intro, the basics, and then to put it down and walk away having read a good book and leave it at that. Ditto for A Song of Fire and Ice by George R.R. Martin. I read Game of Thrones, but I have zero interest in the television show. I have zero interest in like slogging through the rest of those books. Like, I really don't care. I thought his characters were good, and I know what people are talking about when they talk about it now, but I won't be reading the remainder of the books because it just sounds like homework to me. I also feel this way about the Ender's Game series by Orson Scott Card. With all of his politics and religion aside, I enjoyed Ender's Game, and why mess with a good thing? I'm just gonna leave it there, and that's it. Then there is the Mara Dyer trilogy, or quartet, I don't even know what it is. This one, I was excited because it's a little bit different genre. We get into some like paranormal stuff, and I was really bothered by the romance in the book. I felt like it was way too much. This Logan boy, or whatever his name is way too perfect, and he just seemed completely unrealistic to me, and I didn't like Mara, so I was probably supposed to like her. I don't know, maybe she develops more throughout the series, but I don't care enough to find out, so no. The Legend series by Marie Lu is one that I know a lot of people like. It was completely mediocre in every way. I have nothing bad to say about it, but with the dystopian fatigue, again, it's just like, I want to read something better. Like, I want to read 5-star books, not 3-star books. There's also a book called Pawn. Felt so fake. Like, it feels sometimes like these dystopian worlds are created with the intention of being different, but there's only so many ways you could create a dystopian world before I start to be like, would a society really do that? Like, would we really go that direction? I don't think so. Like, that doesn't read true to how humans behave, how they've ever behaved and how they ever would in the future. So that was my problem with Pawn. I also read another dystopian book called Rush, which was about a girl who gets like ripped from her life to go fight aliens in a video game. I love aliens, but I didn't love how much like kissing was going on in this book. It was more about like this sexy, hot, perfect, mysterious boy in the game with her, and less about like aliens, which is what I wanted. And finally, the Maximum Ride series by James Patterson. You can only read so much James Patterson before you start to just be James Pattersoned out. He has a certain way of telling a story. It just doesn't sit well with me after a while. It's very formulaic. It's way too like action and plot based, and I need a little bit more of like other stuff going on. And while it was interesting, I think I read the first 2, it's just like again, reading on and on about these angel kids. Alright, so I know this video is filled with a lot of negativity, so I will be following it up with hopefully later creating a video about series that I love and plan to continue reading. If you think I'm just terribly wrong and a horrible human being, leave those thoughts for me in the comment. Or if you agree with me and you don't get what the hype is about some of these, leave those for me in the comments as well. And that's all for now. Thank you for watching, book nerds. I'll see you next time. I just did a review of this one, but Cinder is also a series where it was okay, but don't have the time to devote to giving 3-star reads more of my time for the rest of the books in the series. I probably will go to Wikipedia and look at the synopses for these because I'm vaguely interested, just don't want to put myself through actually reading the novel.